So, what would you want your story to be about tonight?
About it's very hard for me to think what story I want because I have I had lots of stories, so it's hard for me to pick one.
Well, just imagine something fun and describe it to me with a few words.
A snake that always wanted to be a grown.
A grown-up snake?
Yeah,
Huh. Hmm. Hmm.
that loved to fart.
Fart.
Not fart, but that's gonna be actually. I almost forgot. Farting is boring.
Not boring, but not the center part of the story.
Yeah, I don't like uh, the farting anymore, but
How about something else? Not a snake that wants to be a grown-up. But the story is not about something that wants to be something else. Because we've done that a lot lately. Remember the what was it? The bird that wanted to fly or something like that?
yeah,
And then there was something else that wanted to be something else. I don't remember.
like a train that always wanted to be electric.
Yeah. And then there was the old man that wanted to fly. Always wanted to fly, but he couldn't until the end. So there's a lot of this
Wait,
something
the
that
old
always
man
wants.
that oh yeah,
There's a lot of these stories about something that wants to be something else. So how about we do something different?
a story about a city.
Okay. Hmm. Hmm. This is a story about Jonah. Jonah was a teenager, 13 years old, and he lived in the middle of a field in a huge farm next to a couple of mountains. His life was somewhat simple and boring, if you may consider it that way from our perspective, but he liked it. He tended to the animals of the farm, and he was curious, but there was not much to satisfy his curiosity. So, I mean, he used to read. This is a modern day guy. He used to read a lot, and as often as he could, his parents would take him into town to try to socialize with other kids and make friends. And of course, he would go to school, but he was homeschooled, so he would go to homeschool activities mostly. The rest he did from home. And so he lived a rather simple life for a modern kid. Until one day, something interesting happened. Something actually very interesting. So you see, Jonah used to go herd his sheep to eat grass and plants around his property. Well, his parents' property, anyways. That was rather big. And as I said, that property was next to a couple of mountains. But this time, it just so happened that it had not been raining enough for quite a while. And so the grass was a little dry. And so he thought to himself, well, why not take the ship a little bit away from my parents' property towards the mountains? I mean, I've never been there, but since there are no sheep grazing the grass over there, I'm sure the grass is going to be greener and the sheep are going to be well fed. And it's just about an hour more walk. It's not a big deal. So he grabbed his cell phone, even though there was no cell phone coverage, but he had some music and other things in there. And he grabbed a bottle of water and headed out into the field, out of his property, with several sheep that he herded go towards the mountain. And so he arrived at the foot of the mountain, which is a place where he rarely visited because I mean there was not much to do in there, right? And he was sitting on a big rock, waiting for his sheep to eat to their heart's content, when suddenly something happened that he had never seen before, an earthquake. He knew exactly what an earthquake was, but he had never seen one. And the earth started shaking. It wasn't that bad, it wasn't that strong, but what it was enough for this big rock where he was sitting in to start moving. So he got scared and jumped off the rock and started walking. Well, just as he jumped out of the rock, a huge boulder the size of a school bus came tumbling down the side of the mountain and hit the rock where he was sitting, and they both shattered into pieces. He was barely saved his life because he jumped out of the rock right in time. And he was there in awe. He couldn't believe what he had seen. It was incredible, and he was still alive. He checked the sheep, and they were still grazing like nothing ever happened. When suddenly he saw something weird. Under the rock where he was sitting, the huge rock where he was sitting, which was now gone, there was a hole. And as he got close to the hole, he saw stairs. Well, this was too much for his curiosity, so he decided to go inside and check it out. And as he was descending, a gust of air that smelled rather funky and ominous washed through him, and he thought, this may be a little dangerous, but what's life without some adventure? Let's just go in there. Well, he went down and he turned on the light from his phone because he couldn't see much inside. It was once he got a little away from the stairs inside of this place, which was like a huge cavern. He couldn't see much, so he turned on the light from his phone. He knew from his studies that in caves there's usually water, but he couldn't hear any water running, so he decided to explore a little bit more. He wasn't too worried. I mean, he could still see the entrance, and so he figured, as long as I can see the entrance, I can know my way back there. So it doesn't hurt anybody if I go a little bit deeper inside of this cave. But this was no ordinary cave. It looked more like a mine. It had been carved in some places, and it had rooms and corridors. And he started exploring carefully because he didn't want to get lost. As long as he could see the entrance, he knew exactly how to go back. But without that light coming from the entrance, it would be easy to get lost in there. Well, you know what happens usually after an earthquake?
What?
There's something called replicas, which is other earthquakes. Most of the time, the replicas are smaller earthquakes. Sometimes they're bigger, but most of the times they're smaller. Now, Jonah didn't know this, or at least he didn't think about this at the time, but once he was deep inside the cave, the replica came in. The earth started shaking, and as he turned around to look at the entrance, more rocks came in from somewhere, perhaps come tumbling down from the mountain, and the entrance was covered. Jonah was now trapped in this place. The first thing he thought was, okay, don't panic. I got my water and I got my light here on my phone. So I'm going to go check this out and see if I can clear the entrance. But as soon as he got, well, it took him a while to get to the entrance because the place was huge. But when he did get to the entrance, he realized that the door was locked by a huge boulder that had fallen from the ceiling of the cave, and there was no way to move it. It was bigger than a car. He had no tools and nothing. And worse yet, nobody knew he was there. Well, he thought, if I'm going to die here, I'm not going to die sitting down. I'm going to die trying to get out. And so he started exploring. And explore he did. He moved and moved much faster and with much confidence now that there was no other, there was no fear of getting lost since he was already lost. And he discovered wonderful things. There was a whole city under there. There were roads. He finally discovered water, which was great because he needed some. There were roads. There were things that looked like houses. There were even places that looked like schools or maybe churches. I don't know. They were much bigger than a house, and they could accommodate a lot of people. They had chairs and tables, but it was all made out of stone. It was a whole city. Before you know it, he was tired and he fell asleep. Morning came, which is morning outside of the cave, but for him, everything was completely dark. So he turned on his phone light, which by now had very little battery left, and decided to keep exploring. Well, at one point, he finally saw what looked like a river of water, and he remembered that not too far from his home, there was a place where water was flowing out of the mountain. And he thought if perhaps that was the same water that he was seeing inside of the mountain. And so he decided to follow this river of water. He started walking next to it. And he walked and walked and walked for a long time. Now, what he didn't know is that his parents had noticed that he was missing. And they had started looking for him. And when they saw the sheep being outside of the property and next to the mountain, they realized that he had gone outside of the property and next to the mountain, but they had no clue where he was. Now, the parents knew about the earthquake and thought that perhaps a boulder coming down from the mountain had crushed their son, but they had to find out. So they were trying to dislodge this rock using heavy machinery. They had called people in the town, and everybody came to help with huge equipment to try to move this rock to see if Noah was dead under the rock. But this was not going to be an easy task. But Noah didn't know about this. And so he kept following the river, downstream, walking and walking and walking. When suddenly he arrived at a waterfall. The river was falling perhaps, 10 meters down. He had no equipment to, like ropes, to get down there. He had nothing. And if he were to jump, he could hit the rocks and hurt himself, or worse, kill his body. But there was nothing else he could do. So he decided to jump in the water and hope that the currents would take him. Take him, and they did. As soon as he jumped in the water, he realized his mistake. The water was freezing cold, and he dumped him 10 meters down. He screamed in fear, but finally fell into a pool of water, which got mixed with water that was coming from somewhere else. He was slushing and moving everywhere, trying to hold on to his phone, which was his only source of light, not being able to see much. But he did realize that the currents of the water started getting stronger and stronger. He was fighting to keep his head above the water, when suddenly, a glimmer of hope, he started seeing what he thought was some faint light. and he was getting closer to the light, faster and faster and faster. He couldn't fight the current. He tried to grab onto the rocks. He tried to get out of the water, but he couldn't. And poof! Suddenly, the mountain spat him outside in a torrent of water. The light was so bright, he was blinded. He couldn't see there for a moment. When his eyes adjusted, he was in a calm and tranquil river, not too far from that place he knew where the mountain used to let out some water. But he didn't remember the water to be so strong, the currents to be so strong coming out of the mountain. He thought, well, maybe the earthquake changed something or did something to the water, and that's why it's so strong. Anyways, he looked at himself. He thought, am I dead? Am I hurt? But no, he was perfectly fine. So, with his last strength, he swam towards the shore and started walking home. Now, when he got home, nobody was there because everybody was working on that rock, trying to move it carefully to see if they could find the body of Jonah. But Jonah didn't know this, and he had other priorities. He had been missing for more than a day now, and he was starving. So he started eating and eating and eating. And then he was so tired that he went into his bedroom and slept and slept and slept. All the while, their parents were worried sick because they thought their kid had died. And they kept digging and digging and digging until the townsfolk told the parents, guys, you've been out here for more than a day. You need to go home and eat and rest. We'll keep digging until this rock is dislodged. Go there, and when you're rested and eaten something, you can come back and keep working. They knew the people from the town, so they trusted that they would take care of things. And they were so tired and so hungry that they did so. And as Jonah was sleeping soundly in his bed, their parents came home and they started crying. They thought that their Jonah was dead. And they thought there's nothing they could do. If only there was something that could bring Jonah back. And then he remembered what Jonah used to say. So the mom said, remember what Jonah used to tell us? Yes, said the dad. Never give up. Yes. Always use common sense. Think about things. Don't embark on useless journeys. But if your journey is not useless, if your journey is important, do not give up. And then the mom said, yes, that's right. Never give up. When we don't give up, the universe works to bring things that we want our way. And it's not going to be in our faces, but we can make this. We can make this. And so they decided to go to sleep and not give up. And the next morning they were going to go right back to work. And so they went to sleep. But turns out Jonah had gone to sleep much earlier. So he woke up and he had not, and the parents had been up for a day and a half. So Jonah woke up a lot earlier than their parents. And he went to their parents' bedroom and said, hey mom, hey dad, do you want any breakfast? And their parents were like, are we seeing a ghost? Wake up, said the mom to the dad. I think Jonah is a ghost now. And Jonah was like, what? No, I'm just hungry. Can you make some breakfast? Oh, you're here. And they gave him a huge hug and they were so happy. What happened? And Jonah told them all the story. And the parents were amazed at this. And so they went back to tell the town folks that Jonah was alive, that they didn't need to dig anymore. But when they got there, the whole place was cordoned up by the military. And they asked, what's going on? I'm sorry we couldn't find your kid, said one of the town folks. No, don't worry, my kid was alive. We found him at home. What? Really? Yes, but what happened here? Why is this area all locked up by the military? You're not going to believe this. Let me guess, said the dad. The you guys discovered a whole city. How did you know that? Because my son Jono was there and he told us all about it. And I know of the secret exit that he used. Ooh, we need to go check it out. Yes, but don't tell the military. They don't know about this. It'll be our secret. And so they discovered the lost secret city. The end.